Hi, and welcome to week 4, where we're going to be looking at system inputs. So we're looking at how we sense what's going on in the real world, in the analog world, and how we use that as inputs to our interactive systems. So this really builds on from the controllerism stuff that we did last semester. So in terms of the aims for week 4, I'm going to do a quick recap of what we've covered so far. Then we're going to look at different kinds of inputs for interactive systems. And then we're going to explore MIDI in a bit more depth, then explore audio in a bit more depth. There'll be some additional videos with practical exploration for those, and then outline some areas of independent study. So, first of all then, if you need to recap anything, please see the notes from last week and other materials on Blackboard. What we've done for the first 2 weeks is build a basic interactive system. So the idea here is we've built something that's not fully in our control, but we can interact with it. So we can call it an interactive generative system. So we should have built something where we could use MIDI data to control a random note generator and affect various parameters, including pitch and scales, and also the speed, the kind of note density, through controlling a metronome object. So then we also looked at what an interactive music system is. So this idea of interactivity where you can kind of do something and then listen to the response, and it's what exactly what is going to happen is not entirely predictable. We had a look at types of system, so the different kind of response algorithms, so generative, transformative, reflexive, and so on. That's a way of classifying different interactive systems. And then yes, we built a basic system using Max for Live. So we've also explored the different components. So this is what we're starting to look at this week. We're looking at the sensing component, then going on to processing, response, and output. So sensing is all about how we get data in from the real world. Processing then is how we what we do with that information, and then the response is how we link that up to the interactive system, how the system itself responds, and then our output is how we perceive it again in the real world. Okay, so this week we're looking at this part. So, different types of input then. We can use MIDI controllers, such as MIDI keyboards, launch pads, things like push, so on, to get MIDI data and work with that. So this transforms human motions like pressing notes on a keyboard or using dials and sliders. We can also use audio signals, so we can use a vocal input, we could use an instrument, and we can control the computer by analysing various aspects of the audio signal. This is particularly useful when you wish to play an instrument at the same time as generating a computer output as well. So for solo performers, this is a really useful thing. Physical computing sensors, we can use things like the Arduino with a whole array of sensors to control musical output. So you see this with things like Imogen Heap's Mimu gloves, for example. These are the gloves have built-in sensors, so motion sensors, flex sensors, buttons, and things like that that can be hooked up to musical processes. We could also use tactile human-computer interfaces, also known as HCIs, such as touch screens, using things like Touch OSC. There's links for that later, or the Wiimote. That's quite a popular one. We could use non-tactile HCIs such as the Leap Motion controller or Connect. These are camera-based systems. Or we can use data sensors, things like internet sensors, so you can get information off the internet in real time. So this could be a Twitter feed, it could be information from the stock exchange, and you can use that as input for your system. So let's get into using MIDI controllers in a bit more detail. So this builds on from the controllerism content from last semester. Controllerists include people like Moldova, Daedalus, Madian, and what they're doing is they're using MIDI controllers to usually to play back pre-sequenced material. So the controller itself isn't actually producing any audio. It's being used as the interface for programs such as Ableton Live to play back instruments that are contained within the computer and sound files that are contained within the computer. Advantages include affordability. MIDI controllers start very cheaply, and you can combine different ones to create your own kind of rig. You can use them very easily. So with Ableton Live, you can just go into MIDI map mode and directly map your controllers to various functions of Ableton Live. They're based around very familiar gestures, so they're easy to use. So keyboard, dials, knobs and buttons. They're highly reliable, highly accurate, and there's loads of choice in terms of hardware. Disadvantages might include portability. You've got an extra piece or several pieces of kit to take around with you. Restriction on performer. So if you're playing guitar or singing as well, then you've got something else to deal with. And the other thing is lots of people are doing it because it's quite easy. I suppose everybody else is doing it, which then you've got to think about perhaps how you're going to be unique with this. Okay, so let's get into the practical side of this now. So I'm going to stop this video and we're going to do some practical work with using MIDI as an input.